Welcome to Hotter Than Ever, where we uncover the unconscious rules we've been following, we break those rules, and we find a new path to being freer, happier, sexier, and more satisfied in the second half of our lives. I'm your host, Erin Keating. This is episode number 100 of the Hotter Than Ever podcast. What? How is that possible? Thank you for listening to this show and for sharing it with your friends and loved ones, and for the beautiful feedback that you send me on a regular basis about how these conversations and me sharing honestly about my own experiences in midlife have meant something to you. Nothing means more to me than hearing from you that these episodes have made you feel seen, and that you found me at just the right time in your lives when you needed an honest point of view and straight talk about reinvention and career and divorce and getting older, relationships, sex, how we're represented and not represented out there in the culture, and really what it feels like to be a woman over 40 at this place and time in history. I love all of you so much, and I am so grateful to be on this journey together. You have encouraged me to be more vulnerable in my personal life because I am more vulnerable with you. You have created a space for conversations that mean so much to me and to the other listeners of the show. We are just getting started, as the theme song goes. So, before I cry tears of joy and gratitude, let me tell you about my guest today. Today, I talked to CJ Joseph. CJ is a kink and non-monogamy coach and mentor who is all about liberating sexual expression and cultivating new pleasure palettes. You know, this conversation is up my alley. I want people to think differently about relationships and how they do them in this next chapter of their lives, when they may want and need something different than what the conventional thing was that worked for them for a time and may still be working for them, but maybe not. CJ gets off on debunking the myths around female aging, desire, and desirability, as well as talking about the taboo. She loves welcoming Gen X women into alternative pleasures and lifestyles so that they can experience erotic evolution and neuro-expansion as they age. I am all for new neural pathways. CJ is a certified sex coach, life coach, and cuddle facilitator, and she has lived a transformational, kinky, non-monogamous life for the past 8 years. I am getting a little turned on just from this introduction. All right, let's get hot. CJ, welcome to Hotter Than Ever.
Ooh. Oh, thank you, Erin. Right? We should be getting turned on.
We should be.
And if we're not, why not?
It's such a good question.
Let's get turned on. Yes.
CJ, you come to us today as a person who is living a life that you have invented for yourself in the past several years post-divorce. And it hasn't always been the way that it is for you right now. You lived a pretty conventional life for a long time. So I would love for our listeners to understand how you went from the life you had to the life that you have today.
Thank you, Erin. Wow. You know, I led a conventional life in many ways and unconventional in others. But in terms of relationships, I was a serial monogamist.
Sure.
You know, a lot of us have that experience, right? Where we jump from relationship to relationship, and it may not be the one or the person that you end up getting married to, but you're in a longer term relationship. And how I operated in those relationships was I shut myself down in terms of seeing other people, right?
Sure, that's monogamy. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you do because that's what you see.
Right. That's what we're supposed to do.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Those are the rules.
So, yes. And honestly, for me, I didn't feel uncomfortable in that. But those relationships also, once I've discovered that I had some other place to go
Mm.
or a growth that was occurring or that I wanted to occur, whether it was like living in a different place or getting more education or a different kind of job or just a different like belief. That's often when the relationship I would outgrow it, right?
Mm.
And that was fine, you know, but that doesn't really work in the model of like long-term monogamy and marriage for people, right? Then I moved to LA. I got a job in the public sector, met the person that I was going to end up marrying, and we were on a whirlwind romance. I don't,
Wait, so you were married for how long?
I was married for 10 years, just under 10 years, right?
Okay. And you had kids or no kids?
2 kids.
Okay.
The first was born on our 1-year anniversary. That's
Mhm.
how fast we moved.
So
And
you were a virgin when you got married.
totally. Oh no. What? Okay. So it was like married after 1 year of basically moving in together and dating. And then 1 year later, whoa. Like,
Yeah.
okay, recipe for disaster, people. We need to slow things down. We need to like really know someone because what's one of the major triggers in relationships?
Yeah.
Little kids, sleep
Yeah, it's not
deprivation.
easy.
It's totally not. It's so hard, right? All of the things, way harder than anyone will tell you.
And
And
even if you've been with your partner for
yeah,
half a decade or a decade
totally.
before you have kids, it still changes everything.
It's it will challenge you in ways you didn't even know you could be challenged,
Right.
right? It will push all the buttons that you didn't even know you had.
Mhm.
So at some point, when I began to get enough sleep after having 2 kids within 2 years, I realized that my husband and I weren't really connecting anymore. He
Mm.
was building a business and I was trying to build a family. And so grateful for all the things that we had and the privilege that we lived in and experienced and all of that. But it wasn't what I had envisioned,
Mm.
which was a very connected family, family dinners, things like that. And in retrospect and through conversation and therapy together, realizing like his feeling of what he could contribute and his confidence was in the business sphere.
Mm.
And he didn't feel needed, seen, supported in the family world,
Mm.
partially because of me and partially because I'm just feeling like under attack half the time from kids, from
Yeah.
like I wasn't able to be the mom that I wanted to be a lot of the times too, right? So that's when things started getting yucky and then resentment started to build up because there
Oh, I
wasn't the
relate.
communication. There
Mhm.
wasn't the like him standing up for himself and saying, I didn't really like the way you said that, or that look makes me feel like you're judging me or whatever, and vice versa. So you end up in resentment world. And once you're there for a long period of time, it's really hard to get out of that. Right. So we weren't being intimate. And I started to wake up to like, something's not right.
Mm.
This is not what I wanted. I need intimacy, like sex and intimacy is important to me as a human
Mhm.
and really like top of my list of priorities in my relationships. So not having that was really an eye opener. And like, I just realized, no, this
Did
is not enough for me.
Was that something you negotiated with yourself in the marriage where you were like, "Do I care about this? Is this important to me? Can I live without it?" Like, were those conversations you were having with yourself, or was it just 100% clear that there had been sex and intimacy and then it went away and you were like, "Oh, I can't live without this."
Yeah. the second part.
Mm.
Let me illustrate a picture for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know so many of us can relate to this, that when you're feeling disconnected from your partner and you're in these different roles of parenting, as a mom, as a wife, maybe a job. And at the end of the day, the kids are in bed. My husband was an early to bed person. I
Mm.
was not that person at that time. And I was alone on my couch watching reality TV,
Mm-hmm.
drinking a bottle of wine, and
Yep.
eating a bowl of popcorn.
Yep.
A lot of nights. And every morning waking up feeling regret, disappointment in myself, frustration, sadness, depression, all the things, and realizing like I have so much more than this. This is not what I signed up for. This is not where I want to be, but I couldn't really get out of it in that moment.
Mm.
But I remember a time, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I voiced this to my husband. I said, I need intimacy and sex in this relationship. I need it in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worthy of that. And if I don't get it, this isn't going to work for me. So I wasn't really negotiating with myself. Can I live without this? There was something very like visceral and that existed in me that was like, this is who I am.
Mm.
And I'm not willing to let it go for all of the things that I have. And this sort of vision that other people might have of what my life was that wasn't actually the truth. So we did have good times, of course,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not all bad, but there was a key part missing.
Yeah.
And it was a huge part of my sort of opening up to like, this is not what I want. And we need to move towards either coming back together or changing it. And it took us a couple of years
It's
to
so
get through that.
amazing, CJ, because I negotiated with myself against myself. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted sex and intimacy, but there were so many things that were broken in the way that we were with each other in the marriage that I hid from the possibility of it because it had become so fraught. And I didn't have the faith and the trust to be open enough to have intimacy. And he didn't ever want to be rejected by me, so he didn't try. And we just got to a place where it was like a détente. It was like, okay, I guess we're doing this marriage without sex, without intimacy. And for me, I didn't want to lose that marriage. And
Mm.
so I wanted everything to look right and be right. And I didn't want my kids to have divorced parents. And so I was like, well, I guess that's just not part of my life anymore. Like, I could not have stood up for that in my marriage.
Hmm.
And so I had to kind of suck it up and lie to myself if I wanted to stay in the marriage. And I told myself it wasn't important, which my friends all knew was bullshit because they had known me in my 20s when I was very slutty.
Right?
Yeah.
So you, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you immersed yourself in work.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that was your bottle of wine and bowl of popcorn.
Yeah, I had a bottle of
You
wine
were,
too during the pandemic.
sure,
But yeah.
we all did.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And also, we glorify the alcohol that so many of us are drinking when we're miserable,
I talk about it on the podcast all the time. It's like Chardonnay
right?
ain't going to fix this. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's only making things worse and it's
Yeah.
killing you. It's
Mm-hmm.
slowly killing you, and the lack of intimacy is killing. It's soul crushing. You
Mm-hmm.
are just like, you can say, I don't want my kids to have divorced parents. And I finally got to the point where I said to myself, I don't want my kids to think that this is a healthy relationship because I don't want my kids anymore like that.
Yeah.
We're not on the same team
Yes.
anymore.
Right.
And that is not an example of a healthy relationship. We luckily had the recession. Some of our privilege disappeared overnight. And we had to make some big changes. And I honestly, at that time, felt energized. I felt like we had a common enemy. I felt so like there was a chance that we would come back together. And it was a bad time. Let me tell you, for about a year.
Yeah.
It was not fun. That confidence that my husband was feeling completely eroded, crumbled. He had to, of course, let a lot of people go in the business and things like that. And I felt a lot of empathy for him and other people going through that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, he needs me to make his lunches. He needs me to like be there at the end of the day when he comes home looking like he was completely washed upon the shore. Then once things stabilized and started to go back to normal, I was like, this is not like, it went right back there,
Yeah.
because there wasn't intimacy during that period, but I felt like he
But
needed,
there was teamwork. Right.
there was more of a team. It felt connected. And then I was like, oh, we're going back to like same old, same old. And I was like, that's a no. And
Yeah.
he also was able to admit that to himself at that point. So thankfully for us, it was a joint decision.
Yeah.
It took longer for him to get to where I was, but I was willing to wait for our kids, right? We don't want our kids to experience divorce, but we did it in the best way possible. We put the kids first. We co-parented. Lucky me, lucky us that we were on the same page with all of really like we did the best that we could for the kids. It's hard. So many of us go through this.
Yep.
But one of the benefits from a selfish standpoint of divorce for some of us, and of course, not everyone's ex is willing to step up to the plate. Mine
Or
was,
able.
or
Yeah.
able. I had 50% of my time back. And it was like, oh my God, like one of the benefits of divorce was like, I had time alone.
I was always so jealous of my divorced friends who had 50-50 custody situations because I was like, you get to have a life of your own? And then it hasn't worked out that way for me. I'm pretty much doing it all the time.
I'm
But
so sorry.
yeah, but that's okay. I prioritize my
You
own
do.
personal
I can tell.
life because I don't want to feel dead. I want to feel alive and I want to feel in my body and I want to feel sexy and I want to feel attractive and I want to feel turned on. And so, and I'm sort of pursued it in my own way, which the Hotter Than Ever audience knows all about, which is, if you have to use the language of the day, solo polyamory or solo ethical non-monogamy. I have lovers and they know about each other.
Yeah.
I'm honest.
Yeah.
And it's cool and it's working out for now, because I get to choose it. And also my kids are now almost, proper teenagers and they can hang out by themselves or their dad can come over and watch them while I go out. And then I can have the pleasure of being like, I'm getting what you didn't give me. Anyway, that's horrible. Horrible. I hope he never listens to this. If he does, he does. What are you going to do?
Exactly. I applaud you for prioritizing yourself.
It's hard.
It is because all the forces are against us in that space. You were envious of your friends who were divorced and had 50-50 custody, right? You could be like guilt tripping them. And some people do. Like we buy into that like judgment, right? Of like other people and their situations because we want some of what they have, right? And it's so easy for parents, mothers in particular, to guilt trip themselves. And
Yeah.
all it takes is one little comment, and then you like take that on board. And every time you think about doing something for yourself, you're like, but is that okay? Right. And like me in my marriage, I said, I don't want my kids thinking that this is a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And as a single parent, you don't want your kids to see you not caring for you,
Right.
for not being who you are.
Yeah.
And that is a human being with needs. It's a woman who has desire, who has juiciness
Yeah.
that they're just tapping back into.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, I was in the desert for however long, and now I've got, all the rivers flowing through. I'm going to be drinking from all those streams. Like,
That is
that's how
right.
see you.
Yeah.
And that is such a great example that
Yeah,
you're
they don't
setting
need to
for your
know
kids.
what I'm
They don't.
actually
Exactly.
doing. Nobody needs to know what I'm actually doing, which is another liberating thing about being divorced is I don't have to report to anyone. I report to me.
Oh, can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this recently. We hear so many cautionary tales. And sometimes I live in that space myself because being a single parent or being divorced and being a single woman in her 40s or 50s or whatever is not always easy. It's
No.
not always fun. It can be lonely as fuck.
Yeah.
You can be touch starved. You can be all the things. And also, it gave me an opportunity to break through some bullshit and try new things that
Yeah.
took me out of my comfort zone. And like, I was cranky and bitter about it some of the time. But then it was like, once I realized that I needed to change my mind
Mm-hmm.
about my expectations and almost like start being like, what can I get out of this that's good? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need? Right. And instead of like I love your podcast, I love your story because it's not the cautionary tale of like
No.
divorce. It's like, oh no, don't do that because you're going to end up divorced. It's more like, oh, the opportunities that arise from being single
Yeah.
that you don't have to report to anybody.
Yeah.
You
And
have
look,
so much freedom.
yeah, not everyone who listens to this podcast is divorced, but my
Yeah.
suspicion is
Mm.
if you're listening to this podcast, there is a freedom that you are craving.
Yeah.
And there is a sense of agency that you want to claim for yourself or that you have begun to claim for yourself. And I'm fucking here for it. And I know you are
Same.
too, CJ. And I feel
Oh,
like it is a big, weird, wide world out there. And people are doing all kinds of shit that you do not know about. And that
you
I
do
would
not know
like
about.
that I would
Yes.
like you to know about, because what it's about at this point in our life is choices. What are our options? What are our choices? What could we be doing if we knew about them? What have we secretly thought about that we think, oh, no, never, no. That then we could actually go, well, maybe. Well, let me investigate, which is
I
why,
love
like,
that.
I've gone to dating events and stuff like that and come back and reported to the listeners on this podcast. I went to a pleasure conference that I called DildoCon, because I want to go out there in the world and bring back the options for you, And
Totally.
I think, CJ, that is what you're doing with your life. And I really want the listeners to hear about the wild world that you have been inhabiting and how it's been working for you.
Yeah, thank you. I felt okay. So this was 2011, started dating, serial monogamous, relationship to relationship, really never had to date in my 20s, teens, 20s, early 30s, then married. And then it's like, oh my God, I have to learn how to date and it's the Wild West because of dating it. It took me a couple of years and I ended up in another relationship. I think back now and I'm like, why did I end up in this relationship? Because he didn't leave. He, uh, leave. He just like, I don't mean he moved in with me, but he just stuck around. He stuck around. And there was like a little bit of a thing where I was like, I got some of my juice. Like I was already getting it back on my own. But then it was like he shared something really private that could potentially be like, now it really isn't, but at the time felt very shameful for him.
Yeah.
And he shared it with me. And instead of, I think this is when I had my coaching like epiphany without even knowing it, because he shared this thing with me. And I, instead of being like, ugh, I went, tell me more.
Mm.
And it was sort of a jumping off point for exploration.
It was a
for
sexual
us.
thing. Yeah.
And we just, then I started sharing like what I wanted. And it was like, I want to explore you being more dominant with me. And then we were just in this like whole role playing phase and going to workshops and going to clubs and joining groups and doing these things. And then it was like I started listening to the podcast. I'm like, wait a second, polyamory. Like I know about polyamory, but I didn't really think about it. People do this. People like around me do this. There are parties that people are going to and trying things and having sex in front of each other and all the things. And I was like, oh my God, like that's when I was like, the possibilities, just like, I want to try some of this. And of course, tentatively, whatever, but also just like, yes, like I want to learn more. I want to discover some things. And that's where it all started. So for about 10 years, I've been on that journey and learning so much about myself
Mm.
and what I like and how I can fuck with the structures or the beliefs or just the contain
Mm.
that I've been put in or that we've all been put in. And like jealousy, for instance.
Yes. Okay. So this is big because I mean, there's been so much talk about opening up marriages now that we're
Yeah.
married longer, we're living longer. There's been so much talk about, polyamory and multiple partners and being parts of thruples and all of these different things. And to me, what I would be afraid of would be if I was in a primary committed relationship with somebody, how could I handle giving them and them giving me the freedom to pursue sexual and even intimate relationships, emotional relationships with people outside that primary dynamic? Because I'm afraid I would be jealous and heartbroken. And like for me, I can play now because I don't have a commitment to anybody. And I feel like I'm in charge and I'm the queen and I can do whatever I say and you all can take it or leave it because at the end of the day, I'm alone. At the end of the day, I'm with myself and my kids. And that's my family. But where my heart, I could cry about this, like where my heart goes when I am in a committed emotional relationship, like I don't think I could handle being that vulnerable to be polyamorous.
Thank you, Erin, for sharing that fear, for
Yeah.
voicing it because it's real.
Yeah.
And also for acknowledging that you are the queen of what you're doing right now
Yep.
and taking it down the road to like a potential committed relationship. you don't feel like you would be the queen in that situation. Like
I don't. No, I'm
you're
scared of that.
afraid. You're
Yeah.
afraid of that, right? And also, like, good for you for feeling like a queen. I'd be curious to know if you ever feel sad or lonely when you're driving home from a date and that person, let's say, if one of the people that you're involved with is in a committed relationship, do you ever feel like a sense of like, well, they get to stay with their person and I'm going home alone to my bed? Because I felt like that at
I
times.
don't like to sleep with or have relationships with guys who have primary relationships. I'm involved with people who are separated or one person
Yeah.
who has like an agreement with his partner. And that one is tricky because I hear a lot about how unhappy that dynamic is. And I have to set boundaries around that because I like
For sure.
don't want to hear about that. It's not my problem. And like that's annoying to me. I get enough out of it that it's worth it and it's all above board. But in general, when I put a profile on a dating app, it's like I usually say like, please be single in case we fall in love.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there that
Yeah.
is like, we can focus on it.
We don't need to and we can. I want to hear your story first. But I mean, that's
Yeah.
just where I'm at today. And I
No, I
also
get it.
know I'm in a fucking evolution that is so wild to me. And I just have been so honest about it on the podcast with myself and with the people in my life because I lied so fucking much in my marriage about being happy, about being okay with everything. And I don't ever want to be that person again. Don't want to be a liar to myself ever again.
Was that your sort of touchstone? Like, I'm not going to betray myself.
No, I'm not going to betray myself and I'm not going to be with anyone who could betray me. Yeah.
So I'm sure that a lot of your listeners can relate to what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Or they have that fear of like, I don't think I can do that.
Right.
Okay. I've been there. And I was the person who didn't necessarily have relationships with people that were in other relationships, but I had play experiences with people who were in other relationships or in groups. And I often felt very lonely going home and felt misunderstood because these people often were in long-term marriages and they did not have any sort of inkling what it was like to be me, to be single.
Right.
And to not have their person, right? So if you're going to be a couple out in the world playing in these spaces, please treat other people in ways that like try to put yourself in their shoes. Check in on them the next day. Make sure that they're seen, that they feel okay, right?
There was someone that I was really crazy about who was not as crazy about me. And he was divorced and whatever. Like, I asked him, please check in with me the next day. Like, please, all I want is for you to check in with me. And he did it once. And then the second time he didn't do it. And I reminded him. And he congratulated me on having my own boundaries and saying something and not being resentful, but he didn't apologize. And then the next time I saw him, he didn't reach out. And I never reached out to him again. Because I have to have my own fucking back in this life.
That's right.
I have to have
right.
standards and I have to hold myself to them. And I thought this guy was like boyfriend material. Like he was so attractive to me, but he was not treating me in that way. And so, okay. Like I had to sort of
There's
be like,
your answer.
yeah, the answer's in the
There's your
behavior.
answer.
The answer is always
Totally.
in the behavior. Yeah.
Yes. And how we override that all
Oh my
the
God.
time.
And
we
that's
override.
the
We don't
thing.
believe it. It's right there. We never want to believe it because we've told ourselves a story about this person that like there's no way you
he's going to be
possibly
different
know
because
that.
he's this and he's
Exactly.
that. It's like, no, he's actually kind of worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So getting back to jealousy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my marriage, my current marriage, second marriage, been married for over a year and a half now.
Congratulations.
But thank you. We've been in a relationship for 8 years. And this, he was in Australia and I'm in LA. And this is how it starts. And I just sort of brushed it off at first. But I'm a kinky person. I was looking for my dominant. I wanted to be submissive with somebody. And I had the vision of a DS that I couldn't let go of. That's really what I wanted. The non-monogamy DS is Dom sub relationship. For those of you who don't know, it's part of BDSM. And I am here to be an example of what it could look like, right?
Right.
So we started this off, and I was like, you know what? This is just strictly going to be an online thing. And
You
I'm
met
going to,
online. Yeah.
we met online. I'm going to use this Dom to help me meet some of my goals because I don't know why it helped. He's like my accountability partner, right? Like, that was sort of my thinking, like, okay, so I want to do these things and he'll check in with me and make sure that I'm doing them. And then we're going to like make that into some sort of like arousing, sexy situation because I like to be told what to do and told that I'm a good girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and
A lot of
also
us
be
feel that
naughty
way. Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can
We
kind
were
of relate
fucking
to that.
trained to be good girls and to be praised for being good girls. Like, it's nice
So
to eroticize that.
it is like eroticized. Okay. So you get that part. So then I fall in love with this person
Mm.
because he's showing up for me all the time and really like getting to know me and asking me questions. We talked for 5 months. We knew so much about each other. And then I went over there. I was like, I
Oh
got to
my
see
God.
if this is for real. And
You
then
got
boom,
on a plane
I
and
got on a
went to
fucking plane.
Australia,
Yes. Yes.
across the world to meet a guy you met online who you have been talking to for 5 months. Because why? Why did you go?
We were both craving what I talked about, what I was craving. He wanted to be dominant and he wanted that kind of kinky relationship as like that was the kind of relationship that he wanted. And that's what I wanted as well. And he also had gotten out of a long-term marriage over 20
Mm-hmm.
years. And he did not want to be monogamous. He
Mm-hmm.
is not a monogamous person. I would say his identity is probably non-monogamous or polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
My identity is not. For him, it's a little bit more he is,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's very outgoing and he's highly sexual and just like wants to connect, right?
Mm-hmm.
People. So that's why it was worth it for me to go there because it was like we both wanted the same thing. And I wanted to know if the physical matched up with the mental. Like, how many opportunities do you get for that? Usually it's the physical first.
Right.
And if you're a touch slut or a person whose like love language is touch,
Which every
and
man on every dating app says that's his love language, which is hilarious.
which means he just wants to fuck you,
Exactly.
right? But that's how I was too. Like, I realized, I was touch starved and I was substituting sex to be touched, right?
CJ, can
I,
I stop you for
yeah,
just 1 second?
yeah,
I feel like we need to define kink because
totally.
the word gets thrown around. Oh, it's
Yeah.
kinky. I'm into kink. Like, what does it mean?
Okay. First, whenever we're talking about any of this, I'm throwing out a lot of words.
Yeah.
Non-monogamy, polyamory, BDSM, kink, dom sub,
Touch
right?
slut. Never heard
Touch
it before.
slut,
Never heard it before. I love it.
touch slut. Yes. Okay. It's always important whenever you're engaging with someone, particularly dating, what does that mean to you?
Right.
Okay. Monogamy, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Because if I cannot self-pleasure in your version of monogamy, that different than
People
my
that
idea of monogamy.
that
Oh, for
people could
sure.
I
Yes.
can't.
Or don't watch
That's
porn. You're not allowed to watch porn. That's a big one.
that's not okay. Yeah,
For
lots
some
of
people, that's
nuances to
their
this.
expectation.
Yeah.
That's how they define, like,
Yeah.
their partner watching porn is cheating. That's pretty common, actually.
I've heard people talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So kink, as a different definition, it's an umbrella term.
Yeah.
Okay. Kink is an umbrella. Think of it like queer for
Okay.
the community. Like, it's an umbrella term that everything can fit underneath. So kink is basically anything that is not conventional, but is sexual. And I can get kind of cheeky with it and be like, honestly, we all think that we're doing something unconventional and we're not, because we all have some weird shit that we're into, right? And it's
Well, and weird, you gotta define weird. Right.
exactly
Yeah.
like, it's not weird because other people have their own thing. Or let's say, like, one of the top fantasies for women is to be forced into sex. Doesn't mean they want it to happen in real life, okay? But it's like, it turns you on, it's arousing.
But to be taken,
That
to
is
be
a
wanted
kink.
so
That is a
badly that
kink.
they can't help it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And a lot of men also have fantasy, by the
Mhm.
way. And that's okay too. I think that's like, we can get into that. Like, that's exciting too. Like, ooh, if you've ever, like, dominated a man, like, how juicy can that be too? So kink is the umbrella term. BDSM, quickly, stands for bondage, domination or discipline, sadism or submission, and masochism. Okay. That
It's a lot of
fits
range
under
in
the
those oars. Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah.
that fits under the kink umbrella.
Yeah.
And also another one is fetish. So a fetish, we use fetish a lot, like Hollywood uses it, and it's incorrectly used. A fetish actually is something, in most cases, is something that you're, like, born with or you cannot control, and it erotically supercharges your arousal.
Right.
Like,
So the
it's a
common thing is a foot fetish, right? Like guys who
right,
get
but
turned on
it's
by
like
women who get turned on by feet. I've never
like
heard of a woman who has a foot fetish, but I've heard of a lot of guys who have foot
there
fetish.
are very, like, unusual fetishes or
Yeah.
seemingly unusual, but it's like something that's really, like, tied up in it for that person, and they almost have to have that object or experience or whatever, like, in order to really completely get aroused
Yeah.
or to have an orgasm. Okay? So is that helpful for
Very, very
kink?
helpful.
Great.
Yeah.
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 So
So, and kink is not the same as non-monogamy.
nope.
So non-monogamy or polyamory can be like layered on top of kink or layered
Yes.
on top of a conventional sexual romantic relationship.
Yes. Yes. Not all non-monogamous people are kinky. Not all kinky people are non-monogamous.
Yeah.
Non-monogamy is a relationship style.
Mhm.
Like, monogamy, even though is the default and the expectation, it is a relationship style. And
Yeah.
you can choose it or not. So, getting back to jealousy,
Yeah.
I would like to just put this out there because I think that we have this idea that it's a fallacy, that we have control over someone's attraction to us or their commitment to us. And ultimately, both of us have experienced divorce and other relationship breakups. We don't have control
No.
over this person. In marriage, a document that you sign, rings that you wear, collars that you wear, whatever do not mean automatically that it's forever and that you have some control over that person.
Right. Even if you
So,
get a tattoo of their name on your face, you do not have control over how committed or monogamous or
exactly.
devoted you are to each other.
Non-monogamy has existed forever because, and it was called cheating. I mean, look at Ashley
Yes.
Madison. Look at the things. Okay. It's just there. Like, I look at it like I cannot control this person. So I enter into this relationship with this Dom in Australia, long distance, who doesn't want to be monogamous. Sure, sign me up for that. Hell yes to that.
Sounds really complicated.
And it was fucking terrifying at times because he would share with me that he was going on a date. And I would get really super nervous because we had conversations about a future together. We weren't there yet, but it was like, it is possible. And this is what it might look like, right? In terms of who would move where and all that kind of stuff. Like, we talked about those things right away because I was like, I'm not doing this for kids.
Right. If there's
Like,
no long game here, right.
yeah, like I really was like, there's something here, but I want it like more than just like a one timer. So he would go out on dates. And if they were closer to my age or his age, were within a few years, I would get super nervous. And if they
Mm.
were submissive, because that's what he was looking for, I would get really nervous. And
He's going to want them more than he wants you.
or geographically, it makes a hell of a
Just
lot
going to
more
be
sense.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is hard. This is going to be a difficult thing. And at some point, I had to just let it go. I had to be like, you know what? I can sit here and be miserable and freak out about it. Or I can choose to I started to just build up my confidence, that muscle of like letting go and trusting that it's just going to be what it's going to be because that's all that it ever is. And me holding on tighter isn't going to make him want to stay.
No.
His love language is freedom, I think.
Mm.
Freedom and connection. So I just said, go have a great time. Like, go. And then what I got back was like hotter than fucking hell because
He
I
would
got,
bring you those
he would,
experiences.
he would bring me that energy. He would bring me that desire. It wasn't like he depleted. It was like it just built.
Mm.
And he got to bring it into my world. And it was amazing. And it still is. Like, that's what feeds our eroticism.
Mm.
And I have discovered I'm a pretty confident, solid person. And I get off on like taken down. There's something about that for me within certain, like with boundaries. Like,
Parameters.
you
Yeah.
can't talk about certain things, but other things, it turns hot for me. I don't know. Like, and I love playing with it. It's like, why? Because I have the benefit of being with someone who I know cherishes me and
Mm.
adores me.
Mm.
And he doesn't want to break, right? He will break me for fun. And I love it. And for our own like enjoyment and sexy time. But then I know that he will hold me after.
Yeah.
And that's what DS is. It's like,
going very deep. It's really
yeah,
allowing your psyche to be eroticized in a way that it's deeper than what I think is conventionally played with outside of the kink arena. Yeah. Yeah. And how did you know you wanted this? Because I feel like while I think a lot of us have like inklings of like, ooh, that's sexy to me or whatever, like what did it take for you to be like, actually, I'm going to go out and see what this feels like in my body. How old were you? 45?
Yeah.
And your
A little bit older.
45-year-old woman's
40s.
body, late 40s body, which conventionally the culture says, throw her away. Not appealing, not attractive. We only celebrate sexuality when you're 22 or when you look like a supermodel. My experience has been my normal body I'm now 53 is so sexy to my partners. I can't even fucking believe the amount of time I spent hating my body.
Right.
Because I thought it would made me undesirable. Like the mythology of it, like my head explodes when I think about the amount of self-loathing we are trained to have, the amount of scrutiny and cruelty that we endure from the culture, and then we internalize. And then you find, if you're willing to look for it or you're open to the experience of sexuality in midlife, what is real and what is really you and your turn on is the turn on of your partners.
Mm.
And there's nothing more empowering or hot or sexy to me. Nothing makes me feel hotter than seeing how much my partners relish that part of me without judgment, literally without a shred or an ounce of however you measure judgment, whether it's a solid or a liquid. It's probably a liquid.
It's more like a fuck ton.
Yeah, it's a fuck ton. Right. And has that been your experience too?
I think, okay, going back to the early, like mid 40s dating. Oh, it was awful. And living in Los Angeles amongst the beautiful people and
body beautiful perfection culture.
Oh my God. Like at that time, the sexy thing was I look like a 12-year-old boy hips.
Oh, great.
And figures, like really, really tiny. And I was not. And then the first hurdle for me was like getting over like that and ripping that Band-Aid off the first time I had sex was like, the thing I relished in was that my body worked. Okay. My body worked. I squirted. I was like, hadn't done that in years. I was like, and back. And just like this, like, oh, yes, like mom bod. Wasn't sure if it was still going to work because it's been a while, but I knew I was horny. And then, just like, okay, it looks different. It feels different. It's softer. It's curvier. It's fatter. It's like stretch marked, all that stuff. And like someone still got pleasure out of it. And so did I. Like, work for me. And that's what I wanted. Right. And I just kept trying to go into the places where I felt seen, where I felt desired, where I felt aroused. Now, of course, you've experienced this, I'm sure, but it's like the deluge of younger guys is intense.
It's crazy.
And it's like I was holding that off for so long. And then until I got into a place where I was like, sign me up, I'm trying this, right?
Yeah, it's 31 flavors on the dating apps. So it's like,
may as well.
Yeah.
May as well. Like,
right.
I'm over it. Like, I don't care. I'm good. Let's try this. Like, yeah, you're fucking hot. Like, let's do it. So, but just feeling like seen and desire was like, oh, don't believe the bullshit out in wherever land. All you need to do is pull back the curtain a little bit. And it's like, you are desired as an older woman. And it's not all about MILFs and GILFs and all of that.
No.
It's not just that. You can have boundaries around. It's like, look, I'm not your mommy. I'm not whatever, but find someone someplace where you are desired, where you feel sexy because you are. And being in public spaces, even if you're not being intimate or playing with others, can just be so hot to get dressed up in something that you would never wear in public Like, wear something really hot that you feel super sexy in and be somewhere where people can see you.
Yeah.
What that does for your confidence is
It's wild.
amazing. It's wild. It is amazing.
I mean, I
And
like wear short skirts all the time. Like that's my thing 'cause I have great legs. Like everyone's got a thing, right? I don't have giant boobs, I don't have whatever, but my legs are awesome. I always wear short skirts these days.
have it.
And it's like being a taxi cab with a light on, like, and I'm lit up in my body.
They're all,
and they're all fucking hailing me down.
trying to hail that cat.
They're either literally talking to me or they're aware of me when we are told that we are invisible. It is a
And that's
lie.
hey, I
We
feel
are
invisible
not
a lot,
invisible.
but I'm not gonna like live.
Right. You can
I'm
be
not gonna
invisible
live there.
if you
Yeah.
I am invisible in some modes, but when I walk out with the light on, the light is fucking on.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And just know that that's possible.
And we all have that. Yeah,
It's
we all have the capacity for
possible.
that.
We
Yeah.
do. And it's confidence. It's curating, cultivating that confidence. Go where you feel good. If your relationship isn't making you feel good, like, how are you going to get that for yourself? Like, you need to work on that for yourself
Yep.
and desire yourself,
Yeah.
right? Be your own porn star. Like, make your own porn for yourself. Honestly, I did a lot of that. I would turn myself on by looking at myself in the mirror while I was touching myself. I curated, I cultivated that in my life so that I could gain confidence.
But CJ, are you an outlier in this way? Because I feel like I'm so curious what women who are listening to this podcast are thinking right now. Like, oh, I could never. Oh, that sounds hot. Oh, really? I am like projecting out what people are thinking because I don't think this conversation exists in the culture. And it is happening underground.
Yes.
All around us.
Yes. Okay. So outlier, probably not as much as you think. Okay. That is bullshit. Like, that's a way of keeping us down, right? That it's like, you are invisible, you're this, you're not desired because of your age. You need to peel back the layers. I do think that this is happening. I do think that I'm not unusual. I think that there are so many of us out there, and I know that there's someone out there going like, yes, like feeling tingly right now because that is them. I'm speaking to them. Come out and play. Come out and play because you're probably in a box. And even though things might be amazing, your life might be great and you might have a good sex life with your partner, or you might be getting your needs met in so many ways. What else can you do to have more fun? Like, let's make this fun. And BDSM and kink, there is a sort of like looming darkness a lot of the time over it. Like, it's something like taboo and we don't want to speak about it. And it's scary and it's predatory.
Right, it's a dungeon and
it's dungeons, it's darkness. Like, I'm super like playful and bright and fun.
And your partner is too, right?
Oh my God. He's like a goofball, right? He's a total goofball.
He's not like wearing all leather and carrying whips and
no, none of that.
Because that's the image that gets conjured.
And that's fine too. Like, that's okay. And even people who do wear leather and are in dungeons, playing in dungeons, it doesn't, the amount of conversation and negotiation that usually takes place within a healthy kink relationship or community is beyond anything you will experience in normal dating or even normal relationship.
Right.
So we need to debunk that shit about BDSM and kink because
that it's dark, that it's not about consent. In fact, it is
in
about
the vanilla
negotiated
world,
consent to a degree you wouldn't believe. The questionnaires and I mean, you just Google kink questionnaire and you will not fucking believe it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, does bad shit happen?
Sure. It's
And
life.
bad shit happens everywhere else too. There are predators abound. You got to be smart. And dungeons actually can be a really great place to get to know someone because there are other people around and you can actually play without having sex and experience their style and feel like someone will pay attention if you call red on a scene, you
Mhm.
know?
I've never been
That
to a
doesn't
dungeon.
yeah, oh, well.
No.
So, we need to transfer some into
Yeah.
just regular vanilla dating, right?
Yeah.
So, it is playful, like, that's what this is all about, like, the age where we're at, it's like, how much fun can we fucking have?
Yeah.
And what is that gonna do for us as we age?
Yeah.
For me, like, that mind fuckery stuff or just playing with jealousy, playing with what arouses me or doesn't, or some sticking point for me and I can push through that. What's that doing in here?
Right.
What kind of new pathways is that creating? How
Yeah.
can I get out of this story that I've been told and that I believed and that I started saying myself and rewrite it and tell a new story?
Mm. I love that so much, CJ. I could talk to you for another hour, but I just want to ask you a final question, which is what is it that you want the listeners to this podcast to know about what their options are and what their choices could be at this stage of their lives over 40?
You don't even know. You don't even know the half of it. And maybe kink does not speak to you. There's so many other options out there. There's so many explorations. Okay, let's just take one bisexuality. I had my first bi experience in my 40s.
Mm.
Even though it had been an inkling or like an attraction or desire, but it never rose to the top for me. Like I always dated men. And I was like, I'm gonna fucking see if this is for real. And now I have so much fun, with playing with all genders and being in relationships and all of the things, right? There's that.
Mm.
And that's a possibility. Like what would it be like to test yourself in terms of your type? Can you be attracted to someone who is not your type? Can you be attracted to, someone who's shorter or taller or bigger or a different color, whatever, like playing with that stuff? What if you're drawn to spirituality and like you want to experience tantra? That's not my jam, but for a lot of people it is.
Right. And
There's
it's a
more.
way into a rich erotic life.
So
Yeah.
it's a way into exactly like find that they exist. They are out there in the world. You need to start looking. And you can work with people like
Yeah.
I'm a coach and I'm a mentor, right?
Yeah.
I have a coaching program called Erotic Evolution because it's about evolving through the erotic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, where do you want to go? Finding that out because here's the other thing. Most of us don't even ask ourselves or know the answer to what it is that we want.
Right.
We're scared. We're scared to even like ask that question
Right. It feels like
because
there's
we're
too
so
much at stake
busy.
if the answer is something unconventional.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be.
Right.
You can explore in your mind or in your relationship or in your attitude in a safe way. You don't have to blow everything up.
Right. But if you want to, you can do that too.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, CJ, for taking the time to have this conversation. I hope it's been enlightening for the listeners in the way that it's been enlightening for me. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much for being a beacon in this world of like following the script. And like now you are just like, I want to expose the things, and I love how welcoming you've been to this conversation because I think it's important
I
for
do
people
too.
to know, yeah,
I want
what
women to feel
possibilities
free.
are there.
I want women to feel free at the
Hello.
end of the
Yes.
day, to make our own choices and to feel our freedom and our agency in our lives. We get one life. Why not live
You say my favorite word.
it? All right.
Freedom, agency. We
Yeah.
have the agency.
Yeah.
We just need to fucking use it.
Yeah. Totally.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks for listening to Hotter Than Ever. If you loved this conversation with CJ and it tickled some curious place in you and maybe woke up some secret thoughts you might have been harboring, or it somehow aligned with a late night conversation you had with your best girlfriend or your partner when you were really getting into it and sharing your deepest truths, share it with your friends, share it with your partner. And if you haven't ever commented on any of our posts on Instagram, start that conversation right now, and I promise I will respond directly to you within a week. How does that sound? I will make that deal. Comment on our posts, drop us a note, and let us know if this conversation about different ways of thinking about relationships and sexuality in midlife spoke to you in a particular way. Did you love it? Did it make you uncomfortable? Did it open your mind to something you've never thought about? Are you like, yeah, no? That's a fair response too. Anyway, I want to hear how it landed for you. Hotter Than Ever is produced by Erica Gerard and Podkit Productions. Our associate producer is Melody Carey. Music is by Chris Keating with vocals by Isa Fernandez. I will talk to you next week, hotties, and let me know what it feels like to have the wind blowing through that open mind of yours.